there are strains of religion that are deterministic and say that everything that happens in the world is a plan. There are. Calvinism, for example, does that. In Judaism, that's actually very rare. There are a couple of notable thinkers who say that, but almost no notable Jewish thinker believes that what happens here is preordained by God. And in fact, free will and the free will to do horrendous things is built into the system and is the prerequisite of the chance of human beings to both sin and also to do wonderful things. So when you say that God made this man do this, that's all part of the plan, and she's going to be rewarded in the afterlife for the horror that God inflicted on her here, I can, with all good conscience, say, look, I'm not going to speak for the pet envisioning Christians that you speak for, but I will speak certainly for my own tradition and say that that's not actually what Judaism believes. It's not what almost any major Jewish thinker says, and I wouldn't believe it if it did say that.
That's a great cafeteria to be shopping at. Take your pick.
What do you mean, take your pick? I just said that almost no major Jewish thinker says that, and if they did, I wouldn't agree with them.
Both of you, confronted with Sam's perfectly clear attribution of the words of the Rambam, you said, well, it's as likely that paradise is in the sages as the sages are in paradise.
I didn't say it, the Talmud did.
Yes, right, the Talmud says. And your colleague says, Maimonides writes in order to be misunderstood, and it's deliberately, which is, by the way, I quite agree with the Straussian reading of him that says that that is so. But this is a guide to the perplexed. What you're saying is he wants to intensify perplexity.
Welcome to Judaism.
Yes. He also, look, when you say, for example,
you have this smorgasbord of options,
let me give you a little sample of how Rambam thinks. When it says, for example, in Isaiah that the lion will lay down with the lamb, right? And you know Woody Allen's line that the lion will lay down with the lamb, but one of them won't get much sleep. So,
no, the lamb, actually.
So Rambam says this is not to be understood literally. It means big nations and small nations will dwell together in amity, and you should not think that the order of nature will be overturned. Now, I didn't invent that. It's right there. I can show it. It's the end of Malachim. It's the end of the code of law. And he has a sophisticated understanding of religion. If you say to me, are there people with an unsophisticated understanding of religion? I have no doubt that there are. I even know a few. But you're not sitting with them on a stage. And I don't think it's actually, I don't understand my task to be to defend understandings of religion that I don't adhere to. So I'm happy to argue with you what I understand about religion, but obviously, if I thought mainstream Christianity was the way to understand religion, I'd be a mainstream Christian. Right. And I'm not.
Well, I want to make 2 points in response. I just want to kind of show you all how the sausage of faith gets made. Or at least argued for. I see 2 problems with what you just did, and perhaps you're aware of them. One is that Maimonides actually said that this could not be understood allegorically or in any other way, but literally he came back 25 years later after he had been misunderstood in the Guide to the Perplexed and wrote, I think in his commentary to the Mishnah, that the resurrection is a literal truth, has to be believed in. There may be some caveats there in his theology, but he was talking about bodies being reanimated. The other issue is you made this sort of artful move to the free will loophole. You said people have free will. If a man wants to lock his daughter in a dungeon and have sex with her, God has allowed that because he's given us this rather diabolical freedom. That doesn't cover all of the other suffering for which only God can be responsible if he exists. The 9 million children I just talked about dying every year through cancers and violence and accidents and lack of access to clean water. And this is God's fault if God exists. I mean, either he can do nothing about this, or he doesn't care to. So either he's impotent or evil. I mean, this is the problem that the free will doesn't get you out of.
David and Brad, I wanted to pick up on that point in the context of this afterlife issue, which is if you believe in a just God, how could you not believe in a world to come where the good receive benefits and the evil are punished?
Look, the challenge here is everyone has great clarity in the God they don't believe in. And I don't believe in that God either. Right? So,
what's God? But so how do you tell us how you understand gratuitous misfortune visited upon the innocent?
Like being in a debate like this.
Oh. My condolences.
Not forgiven. So, look. This is a talk I give to first-year rabbinical students in congregations all over the country. It is a medieval mistake based on Aristotelian thought that God has to be a simple, unmoved mover, and thereby eternal, omniscient, omnipotent, and omnibenevolent. Right? Those are terms that don't exist in biblical or in rabbinic Hebrew. So I apologize for the way the philosophers kidnapped the traditions, but it's not in the Torah. There is no Hebrew word for omnipotent, meaning all-powerful, and the concept is a nonsense concept.
So you're saying God doesn't have the power to change these things?
Yes, of course that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that what God has is a different kind of power than the power of the dictator that Christopher Hitchens and I both despise. And that what I look to God to be is a persuasive power, more comparable to a teacher or a lover or a parent who teaches and inspires you to be the best by seeing your potential and by giving you the vision and the power to rise to it. But I don't believe in a God who breaks the rules or who can intervene or who can do magic. And the challenge here, may I just say one more thing before you leap on me?
Sure.
It is the 125th anniversary of the birthday of Alfred North Whitehead, my Rabbi. And so in his honor, I tell you the following Hasidic story. The story is told of the Kutzker Rebbe, one of the great masters of the Hasidic tradition, who, walking past someone's home, sees that they're so impoverished they don't have the capacity to have a Shabbat meal. And so he prays for her to have a Shabbat meal magically bestowed upon her. I mean this only metaphorically. And no actual Hasid involved in the story itself. So he prays that she should have this miraculous Shabbat dinner given to her, and she does, and he hears a vision which says, because you've intervened in the affairs of this world, you've lost your place in the world to come. And he starts to dance. And he says, when his students question him, he says, for the first time, I'm able to serve God without expectation of reward. That's in mainstream rabbinic tradition. So often I had the sense that what's being criticized is a kind of ignorant abuse of religious nuance, and we certainly know, anyone who's been in an airport has read self-help books that claim to use scientific findings to justify all kinds of stupidities, which I don't think you can hold science responsible for, even though probably numerically there are far more people who have nonsense ideas based on false science as they do in religion. The challenge here is you say it's man-made, and I agree. It is man-made, as is medicine, as is law, but the solution to bad medicine and bad law is not to get rid of it. The solution is to have open discussions and continue to refine it and surpass it. Christopher.
There's a story I was told, not unlike that, but a Roman Catholic priest, actually could really be any Christian. There's a comparable. This is not my fault.
Just hold the mic. Why don't you hold the mic? Yeah.
Okay. There's a comparable story I was told about the death of I think it was a Roman Catholic priest, but it could be any Christian official, really, who gets to St. Peter's Gate and is told, well done, thou good and faithful servant. Here's your place. We've been preparing for you in paradise. And he says to St. Peter, but I see that there's terrible suffering and deprivation and misery among the souls in hell. Surely my place is with them. ministering to them, and he's told, you really don't get it, do you? One of the reasons why I like doing this, some people say sometimes, don't I ever get tired of debating with the religious? No, absolutely I don't, because you never know what they're going to say next. Sam and I don't mind being called predictable. It's very easy. We know what we think. We say straight out where we think we know and where we think it's not possible to know, why we don't think there's a supernatural, and so on. But this evening already we've had your suggestion that God is only really a guru, a friend when you're in need. I mean, he wouldn't do anything like bugger around with Job to prove a point. And which, if I now tell you, well, that must mean that that book is not the Word of God, you'd say, well, whoever believed that ever was the Word of God? Let me just tell you something. For hundreds and thousands of years, this kind of discussion would have been in most places impossible to have, or Sam and I would have been having it at the risk of our lives. Religion now comes to us in this smiley face, ingratiating way, because it's had to give so much ground, and because we know so much more. But you've no right to forget the way it behaved when it was strong, and when it really did believe that it had God on its side.
You know, I just want to say so much of this is the frisson of the rebel, and I just want to read you these two sentences. It's nonsense to pretend, for instance, that at this date there's something daring and original in proclaiming yourself an anarchist, an atheist. The daring thing, or at any rate the unfashionable thing, is to believe in God. That was 2002, Christopher Hitchens, in a review of Yves Lenoir and George Orwell. And I think that there's some truth to that. It actually is very difficult to argue God in the public square these days.
Since Spinoza, yes.
What's that?
Since Spinoza, yes.
Since Spinoza, yes. Actually, since Hitchens and Harris. But despite the fact that there is no question, as has been not only pointed out but easily admitted, that religious thinkers in the 21st century don't actually, if they have good sense, pronounce identical nostrums to religious thinkers in the 2nd century, even though they may use much of the material to explain what they believe. The dilemmas and the essential answers are the same. And the dilemma that we're facing is the extraordinarily difficult realization that when you die, you lose everything. And that's always been true. And everyone has always faced that. And have time for a really short poem?
Yeah.
Hausman, A.E. Hausman, has this kid standing in the town square. He says, "Good people, do you love your lives, and have you ears for sense? Here is a knife like other knives that cost me 18 pence. I need but plunge it in my heart, and down will come the sky, and earth's foundations will depart, and all you folk will die." Right? It's like you lose everything when you die. And that's always been the case. And religion, in one sense, has always realized that, which is why you get, especially in, I'll speak about my own tradition, a tremendous emphasis on making this world better. Which is why you can't build a community without what we would call essentially a welfare state in any Jewish community in the world. Because the understanding is there will always be suffering, there will always be pain, and it's the human job to ameliorate that. We're actually taking the discussion a little bit to a different level, to the consternation of some of my discussion partners, which is to say, look, you all know, for example, let's think about this not as biologists but as physicists. You all know that there's this idea in physics of multiple universes. That is, that right now there is a universe, or many of them, that parallel our own, with maybe slight differences, like maybe there's a universe where Rabbi Artson and I are winning. But other than that, there are these multiple universes. Now, in a world in which it is possible to assume that there are multiple universes that go on at the same time, is it not possible to believe that there are multiple lives for human beings that live in this universe? That's actually, despite the fact that I know you have many problems with religious history and religious doctrine, that's the question we were asked tonight. Is it possible that there's an afterlife? And both from a scientific point of view and